Hey everyone, not sure if you're familiar with the Grabher story. If not, I'll share a link to my past videos covering this particular story so you can become familiarized with the particular story I'm referencing. Today's video is regarding the decision handed down by the courts regarding that case. And as I've come to expect, in Canada, in recent years in particular, freedom of speech is definitely under attack. And there doesn't seem to be any rhyme nor reason as to who exactly they're going to target. We're all at the mercy of the political, media, and judicial class in this country who seem hell-bent on denying or destroying all those liberties and rights that were fought for and many people died for in the past. And it's not just your ruling class and thought leaders who are to blame. It's the millions of apathetic Canadians who remain silent and refuse to stand in defense on those very important liberties. Rights, freedom, and liberties do not exist if people are unwilling to fight to defend them. They're just words written on parchment or paper or on a computer screen in the absence of a population of citizens willing to defend them. Headline on the National Post: man's rights weren't violated when his Grabher plate was revoked, Nova Scotia court says. Lauren Grabher had the plate for nearly 30 years until the province revoked it in 2016 after a woman complained that it promoted hatred towards women. That's right, you heard that right. A woman. One woman called to complain about the man's license plate, which, by the way, it's his actual last name. But apparently because she saw something reported on one of those sensationalized tabloid-style 24-hour news stations such as what? CNN, CBC, CTV, MSNBC. Apparently it shocked her sensibilities. She felt a need or a compulsion to complain, and this is the end result and consequence. This being reported by Keith Doucette, Canadian Press, January 31st, 2020. Halifax. A Nova Scotia Supreme Court judge has dismissed a claim by a man who says the province infringed on his freedom of expression when it revoked a license plate personalized with his surname, Grabher. The Nova Scotia plate Lauren Grabher had for nearly 30 years was revoked in 2016 by the province's Register of Motor Vehicles after the agency received a complaint from a woman who said it promoted hatred towards women. In a 50-page decision released Friday, Justice Darlene Jamieson said there is no constitutionally protected right to freedom of expression in a government-owned personalized license plate. The judge said license plates are not public spaces with a history of free expression, adding she doesn't believe people expect unlimited access to free expression on them. The fact that government has allowed limited access to the space does not make it a public space, she said. First of all, before I read any further, government is supposed to be the institution that represents the will of the people. These judges and the bureaucrats seem to forget that. Governments have no rights or special privileges, and governments don't give you your rights. They're only there to acknowledge and respect them. However, Jameson said her ruling should not be taken to imply there's anything wrong with Grabher's name. This decision is not about whether Mr. Grabher's surname is offensive. It is not, she wrote. The decision is not intended in any way to diminish the importance of Mr. Grabher's surname or the pride that Mr. Grabher and his family take and should take in their name and heritage. Jameson said the registrar recalled the plate because the 7 letters Grabher could be interpreted as a socially unacceptable statement without the benefit of further context that license plates can't provide. The primary function of a license plate is not expression, but is identification and regulation of vehicle ownership, Jameson wrote. A license plate, by its very nature, is a private government space. Private government space. Who pays for all this stuff? Who pays for government? The people. Therefore, it's very much public space and publicly owned. Jameson said Grabher failed to establish that the registrar's decision limited his equality rights and concluded its decision to revoke the plate was justified under provincial motor vehicle regulations. Under the regulations, the registrar can refuse to issue personalized license plates if the proposed combination of characters expressed or implies a word, phrase, or idea that could be considered offensive or not in good taste. The Nova Scotia decision follows one in Manitoba last October when Queen's Bench Justice Sheldon Lanchbury ruled it was reasonable for Manitoba Public Insurance to revoke a Star Trek fan's Assimilate plate after receiving a complaint that it was offensive to Indigenous people. Once again, another ridiculous story, and once again, one person complaint. And I'll share a link to my video covering that story in the description of this video as well. Landsbury ruled it was reasonable to take back Nick Troller's plate because the word is connected to the indigenous experience and government policies of forced assimilation. Grabher declined to comment Friday when contacted by the Canadian press, but his lawyer said the court ruling would be reviewed before deciding on a possible appeal. I think that there are a number of problematic aspects to it, said Jay Cameron of the Calgary-based Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. He pointed to part of the Manitoba ruling in which the judge found that in permitting limited expression on personalized plates, the regulator had authorized a new location where free expression is entitled to protection, a finding Jameson noted and disagreed with in her ruling. Cameron also noted that Jameson basically ignored the fact that Grabher had been issued the plate for nearly 30 years without objections being raised. What is the rationale for giving a bureaucrat the authority to take away the expression of somebody's last name, when for 27 years it hasn't caused a problem before, he asked. Anyways, folks, I'm not a lawyer and I've never played one on TV, but I can say myself, listen, I've had to deal with the court systems in my life. And one thing that I definitely noticed was that the laws, even the laws that sound good in theory or on the books, when you rely on fallible human beings who have their own ideologies, opinions, and preferences, well, once again, it's completely mystical thinking to believe that the outcome is always going to be or err on the side of justice or common sense, as can be clearly seen in this example and the assimilated example. I mean, this one in particular is so blatantly obvious, but just by the sheer fact that it's the man's last name. I mean, sure, you've heard the judge try to use some legalese or bullshit pretense or excuse as to why she's going to deny that man's ability to have his personalized plate that he's had for 30 years any longer. But like I say, that's what we're stuck with nowadays. Political activism is very real and happens on the bench just as much as it does now in the media. You're not being represented, you're being ruled. Laws aren't being properly interpreted. They're being used as a sledgehammer to come down on anyone who challenges the status quo or the ruling establishment or doesn't align with the new politically correct regime that now dominates the political, media, judicial, and bureaucratic landscape in this country. Freedom of speech is heavily under attack, and most Canadians seem willing to accept it. Well, I'm not, which is why I will continue to report on incidents such as this so that it's on record and can be used as evidence against those who use their position of power or so-called authority to deny us our inherent, inalienable, and God-given rights. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.